And thank you for coming, and David Cowell.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you for coming on a day when I'm sure many of you have other things to do in a very religious week. I'm very pleased that you're here and to be part of it. It's not the first time I've given this lecture. In fact, I've given it so many times now, I'm not sure it's the same lecture. But one of the nice things is you can keep doing research. And so I keep finding more and more things, which is one of the great things. Son, you will be the buyer of this kind of merchandise. You will be the buyer of that kind. And do like I did, buy it in quantity. And you will give one quarter to your brother, another quarter to the other brother, another one to the other brother, and so forth. So out of that stone store that stood down in West Caldwell becomes the first department stores in the United States in 1868. Now there's another brilliant idea coming from the road. All in all, of course, this would have to come to an end, and it does. And by 1870s, the road is not making money anymore. And you can't let its upkeep fall away entirely. What are you going to do with an asset you can't sell to any other commercial investor? What does anybody do with an asset they can't sell to anybody commercially? They sell it to the government. And so they sold it to Essex County. Thus, Essex County became the first county in the United States to own a road. The first county road in the United States. And the other towns, when they found out what the freeholders had done, said, we want a county road. And so the county built Bradford Avenue, Eagle Rock Avenue, Mount Pleasant Avenue, Bloomfield Avenue, and Hobart Gap. And they all paved them and bridged them. Then the people began to say, well, how do we get from Northfield Avenue to Caldwell? We need some county roads to run north-south. Now the county therefore had to face the fact that it had to build a road called Pleasant Valley Way. It had to build something called Roseland Avenue, Livingston Avenue. It had to build something called Passaic Avenue, and began to tie this together, which gives us our present grid, or gridlock, if you want to see it, on which we did. By 1878, the county has taken it over. That's not the end of the story. By 1879, with the county building the other roads, in 1879, Bloomfield Avenue lost its monopoly on the trade going east and west in New Jersey. That hasn't wiped us out, it's just created a very different option. Almost all of the building of New Jersey. By the way, one of the great things about this road is not only did it bring in these people, but also developed the specialization of labor. Every farmer in the 18th century did his own blacksmithing. Every farm family made their own shoes. Every farm family cut their own tobacco. Every farm family ground their own wheat. Shortly after this road was in here, there were 15 blacksmith shops, all specialists. There were 10 wheelwrights. Shoe industry became a major industry. The Civil War came along, we lived well. We made shoes for the North, the South, the Army, and the Navy. It all worked. Specialization of labor comes. Almost every aspect of the life in West Essex has been shaped by the Great Road. And we ride by it every day and are completely unaware, they say. There's not a marker on it. There's no designation of anything. It's not even named after a hero or anything else. It's just Bloomfield Avenue, or G.D. Bloomfield Avenue, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, he was a governor.
Well,
They did invade Canada.
Yes, they in fact named the town after him. Right. So we have today one of the most curious things that we've got. Still a major U.S. road, the most densely traveled non-highway in the United States. It's a pioneer. We don't know anything about it. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions?
There are trolleys, right?
Trolleys come later, in the 1890s, yes. They started on the lower parts. They couldn't get up the hill from Montclair. It took a long time before they got up there. The first trolleys on Bloomfield Avenue were horse-drawn. But the horse-drawn trolley couldn't get up the hill. We had the same problem in the west. The horse-drawn buses and trolleys from the west, you had to get off at Lane Avenue. All the passengers had to get off and walk up the hill to Caldwell because they were too heavy for the horses to pull. And stones are very slippery for horses in wet weather, even when they're shod. So the trolleys, eventually, when they were horse-drawn, they couldn't make it here. Even when they came from the west, from Morris County, when they got to Lane Avenue, they had to get out and walk up when you get into Caldwell. By the way, that's right next to Lane, mine's gone blank, the name of Ravine. That was the other major brook in the area, but that's gone now, it's underground, it's disappeared. It only floods every now and then when the sewer lines back up. That was it. So eventually you had to wait till you got actually electric trolleys coming. And that doesn't come to me in the 90s. That's difficult too, because when the first trolley comes out here, it turned around on Central Avenue because it couldn't make it down the hill and back up. So they turned at Central. And there was a big turnaround there and came through. On the day the first trolley came through, everybody turned out cheering. It was a big event, a big motion of progress here. It would help everything. And the kids were riding around on the bicycles with streamers on and everything. One of the kids got his bicycle wheels caught in the tracks. And the trolley came along, killed him. So on the first day, we have one of the Colville's tragedies took place at the Central Avenue. Yes?
I know how the first lines on the road were made.
How were they made?
This girl, she took one bucket of paint, and she painted lines from one spot, I think where she lived, to like a whole nother town.
That's right. That creates
I watched
lines down the middle of the road. The road was actually more complicated than that because alongside it existed the old road. So if you didn't want to pay the toll, you could take the mud road alongside it. So for a long while, this road out here was at 2 levels. Slowly but steadily, then when the county took it over, it was raised to make one road all the way through. And there it nearly needed to have lines for it. But the trolleys ran down the middle, not on the sides, which was a shame because then the road got wider as you put in parking spaces and the sidewalks got smaller and you lost your cafes and all the things to get on the side of the road. So we're now in the position now where we're trying to go the other way. Trying to get the sidewalk safe enough that you can now have, like you do over here at the coffee shop, where you now have some chairs out on the road and people can gather. Because the road has become almost unusable for pedestrian traffic until we get some barriers up. That's why we separated the curb from the sidewalk with that brickway, to create a visual barrier so that people wouldn't push each other into the street and into traffic. So it's a good story to tell. Yeah. Should also add the other thing, of course, eventually the commuting, which the trolley was replaced by the railroad. The railroad reached Caldwell again in the 1890s. Eventually it would reach over into Essex Fells, where it would turn around, turn the engines around, and come back. And Essex Fells had a rather big railroad yard there. But when the railroad first came into Caldwell, having climbed the mountain, and had to go all the way up to Great Notch, and then run across all the way through the towns in the valley there, up to Verona to get enough height to go under Bloomfield Avenue. The cut is still there. And then run along parallel to it till it comes to the bend here, where the road turns, where Forte is. And that's where the railroad station was put. And they lined it up in all in perfect lines. So the first train came in, they didn't realize that the train was rigid. So as it's going around the corner there, there's part of it is going to hang off that curved rail. So the first train that came in hit the station, smashed it. And on the other end of the station was a band playing, and a big crowd had turned out to welcome this great development. It must have been a wonderful day to watch them all run for their lives. So the train smashed the station in front of them. But they got here. It's an interesting thing. Any other questions? All right, go home, do some research. The nice thing is to walk it. There's so many interesting things on Bloomfield Avenue that you never think about. For example, Cowell has 9 alleyways going off there between stores and buildings. Walk the avenue and keep your eyes open. See if you can find the alleyways. Or look at what happened at the Great Bend up there. What's at the Great Bend? It's now at the foot of Lincoln School. Well, what's there? Why would they build a wall with rocks on the top of it? Pointed ones.
To keep the kids from sledding off into the street.
Keep the kids from sledding down into Bloomfield Avenue, which was too dangerous because the traffic was too bad. All of these little things are there if you go look for them.
Dave, the stone bridge that's on Fortin Road, is that of the style that they?
The same style, yes.
So
It's
that's
a stone arch
one they
bridge.
could see without having.
But that comes
to
later.
ride. Yeah.
That was built later in the 1820s. It's still a very old bridge and one of the few things that we were able to get protected. Because people still complain now it's only 2 lanes wide. But it's probably as wide as Bloomfield Avenue was in its time. I use that as sort of my point, it would be about that wide.
Where is the original bridge that Crane built by Verona?
The Peckman River runs off Verona Lake, right? The river there was dammed to make the lake.
Okay,
There's
so-
a fairly big, when it runs north, it's one of the few rivers in New Jersey that runs north. As it runs north, it runs under Bloomfield
Where is that? I
Avenue.
live
That
in
is
Village Land, so I'm not familiar.
Pleasant Valley Way.
Pleasant Valley Way.
Lakeside, Lakeside. Or, it's called
Verona
Lakeside
Park.
there, but then it becomes Pleasant Valley Way, so.
It's called Lakeside Avenue in Verona. It runs right into Bloomfield Avenue, Lakeside. And right there,
So-
as you turn the corner, there's a bridge over the Peckman River. If you get off and get onto the park side of it and walk down to the edge and take a flashlight, you can see the stone bridge is still under it.
Is that where the Verona Park is you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Verona Park.
It's still there. By the way, there's a long one with several arches in it over a swamp that is on the border of Newark and what is now Bloomfield. And I have not found that. I've been down there and sort of walked around, I haven't found it yet, but everybody tells me it's still under there somewhere. There are a couple of streams running through there that are all channeled now. And I'm not sure, particularly if you take the one that runs through Glen Ridge by the old Glen Ridge and then runs down the hill into Bloomfield, somewhere along there's gotta be more bridges. I just haven't found it yet. But it's a good thing to do on a nice sunny day when you have nothing else, is let's go explore and find it. You can find out, by the way, where the canal cut the river, because now the trolley lines in Newark, the subway runs down that same space. Because they drained the canal and put the subway in the space. Which is why the Newark subway doesn't go
Is that
anywhere.
where the canal was, where the
Yeah.
subway is in?
Yeah, they just took the water out and put the
Ah,
subway in.
interesting.
Now you could ask yourself, why didn't they send the subway up here? Wouldn't it be nice to have had a light rail?
For
That's
sure.
some new political agenda that arises, right? Get ourselves put on light rail. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For those of you interested, it will happen. But what I want to talk about tonight is the Great Road. That is to say, what we today call Bloomfield Avenue, and why it was a great road. Very often it is in fact seen nothing more as a big pain. You can't get across it, you can't drive on it, you can't go fast, you can't make left turns, you can't do anything. And as a consequence, we've kind of lost the vision of what that road really means. And that's what I'd like to pick up on tonight. Well, the first thing I should say is we're going to talk about a man named Israel Crane. Israel Crane was born just before the Revolution in 1773 or 4. Nobody seems to have recorded that on the same date, but that's the way it was. We all know he died in October of 1858. He gets several names in the course of his life. The one that sticks out the most is King Crane, because he became the wealthiest person, and certainly in West Essex, if not in Essex County, in that period of time. What he built is what, in fact, is the leading thoroughfare throughout the state. And certainly was the leading thoroughfare for the first 70 years of its existence. He exceeded in volume in traffic only by Route 1, the New York to Philadelphia corridor, as it was called in those days. It's the heaviest traveled road to this day, the heaviest traveled 40 miles of county road in the United States. And any one day of the week, this road will carry 78,000 cars. It's an incredible burden on the road. It's also a road of heroes, if you'd like to have a little historical thing to throw names around. Lafayette came down this road in 1823, and great celebration here. General Gould was certainly on it, George Washington, General Greene, General Knox. You can go down the list, Ogden, William Livingston, presidents, Coolidge, Harding, Cleveland, Wilson were all on this road. It was also, however, and this is the most important thing, it was also the major success in experimental capitalism in the state of New Jersey. That's a lot to say about one road, or even to worry about a road. Who thinks about where a road comes from? We're more interested in where it goes and where it takes you. How did you get a road? it's unique in a variety of ways. First of all, it's very difficult to get anywhere in Essex County if you want to get away from the Passaic River, because you can't get past the first two mountains. And we think of them as mountains in New Jersey, but when we talk about it, we're thinking of going up from Montclair to Verona, going down from Verona and coming up to heaven, that is, say, Caldwell, and then sliding down again to the Passaic River. But these were impassable. And as a consequence, throughout the early part of the American system, there were no roads that went through this area. You couldn't get here, and you couldn't get out of here if you were there. Think about not driving your new Impala down the road, but think of it trying to take a horse and wagon down the road, or an oxen wagon, or even walking. And walking from here to Verona, then up from the other side, and then from Verona down. It's just an almost impossible task. Moreover, there aren't many places where you can get through without cliffs. If you think about it and you could start out at Great Notch, what is now Passaic County, Bradford Avenue, Bloomfield Avenue, Eagle Rock Avenue, Mount Pleasant, Northfield, Hobart Gap. That's it. These were all Indian trails at the time of the arrival of the settlers here, but none of them were passable. You just couldn't do it. Moreover, all the roads that were built in the 16th and 17th centuries and the 18th centuries all avoided hills. So they followed water courses, which meant they never went anywhere directly. You had to follow the water course to stay on the level in order to be able to travel. What Bloomfield Avenue is and was to become is a straight road. Something that had not been built in Western culture since the decline of the Roman Empire. We think of the Roman Empire, you think of the Via Appia, the way across. You think of the great roads that crossed England. But there was nothing like that from the collapse of the Roman Empire until the building of the Great Road. This is the difference. It was consciously designed to be a straight road so that you could move things faster and directly in order to, in fact, get through. It not only would be a straight road, but it would also be a road that had a surface that could carry the weight of a wagon. Now, wagons in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century into the 19th century, at the most, could carry about 2 tons of weight, if you had a sufficient team of oxen to pull it. 2 tons of weight on dirt meant that on any damp day, you would sink in the mud. On any dry day, if you weren't on the rock, you'd be in the dirt. And as a consequence, therefore, you couldn't move wagons with any ease at all across any distance with any load. It just wasn't going to happen. But add to that you have to go over 2 mountains. And you begin to understand why this area in Caldwell in the 18th century, at the time of the American Revolution, could not support a population. As a matter of fact, it didn't even support a population of Native Americans. There's no evidence of any settlements on this side of the Passaic River in Essex County. This area of the 2 mountains was, some people speculate, a hunting preserve for the Indians, but that was about the best it could be. They couldn't get over it any better than you. You can't put a deer on your back and climb down the hill on Eagle Rock Avenue. You couldn't do it today. You know, it just wasn't there. As a consequence, it was a very difficult problem that had to be solved if, in fact, Caldwell was to exist, Verona was to exist, all of this. And this is the story of what this road then is meant to be. It was built to be that kind of a road. Now, why was it built that way? Well, the answer seemed to be that people had the idea that if we could get over these mountains, we could reach something very important, namely iron ore. All the iron ore in the world is in Morris County in the 18th century. And that's where the iron industry in the United States or the colonies existed. To get the iron ore out of Morris County and into places where it could be turned into something useful, such as anchors and chains and all of the rest, you had to take it out by pack animals. putting bags of iron ore on their sides and dragging them across the land until you could reach a place where you could move the materials. And thus all of it was going by pack animals across this county, across Passaic County, across Bergen County, and finally to reach the Hudson River at a place where you could get down the Palisades. If in fact we were going to develop New Jersey and take it out of the tremendous recession that had occurred because we were the host of the Civil War, of the Revolutionary War, we had to get some control over that iron industry, which meant we had to move an awful lot of rock across the two mountains to get it down to the rivers where we could in fact turn it into chains, anchors, and pulleys, and all of the other iron things you needed in the technology of the 18th century. Thus, there would be a lot of money to be made if we could open up this area. Not because this area was valuable, but because it was a blockage to a possible very productive and very profitable trade. The man who got the idea was Israel Crane. He and his wife, Frances Pearson, sat down and they figured out that if they could find a way to do this, they could make money. And so they set out to do it. No, they weren't the only one thinking this way. A number of other people, the Hobart family, had the same idea. If we could get the iron ore out of Morris County and down into the Newark and what was then Elizabeth, they were all part of the same county then, we could make a fortune. So they went to the state of New Jersey, and in 1801 they got a grant that gave them permission and also eminent domain, so they could condemn the land and take it from the farmers, to build a road from Morristown through Hobart Gap and down what is now a ray of Route 78, take you all the way down to Newark and the harbor. Hearing that, Crane decided, I got to move quickly. And he set about, and in the next year, he got the New Jersey legislature to give him a contract. That would be, of course, a grant that would give him the power of as eminent domain, so he could condemn the land and force the farmers to sell it to him, and he would bring his line direct, not through Morristown, but direct, from Denville, from Denmark, from Mine Hill, bring it directly across West Essex, Horseneck Tract then, and then down into Newark, cutting off that long trip to the south to curve back north, and of course getting the jump on it. Having gotten his contract to the state legislature, Israel Crane then had to find a way to finance it. Now this would be difficult because in 1798, Horseneck was separated from Newark. Newark in those days ran up to the foot of the first mountain, up to what we today call Montclair, then called Crane Town. And as a consequence, therefore, he had to work without a government here to help him. For in 1798, there was no government of Caldwell. It was just a different piece of the Newark properties. To do that, therefore, he had to find another way to finance it. And this is the genius that brings us all about. As he tried to think about it, he couldn't find anyone in Essex County or around who had the capital. All the capital was being sucked into the development of Paterson and Jersey City. The great group that Hamilton put together to finance the recovery of New Jersey was not interested in getting west. They wanted the mills on the Passaic River. And he could raise no capital. So Crane did the one thing he could think of. He created two kinds of stock. One, a capital stock in which you bought shares, like you would on any other incorporation, and he incorporated to do that. The other kind of stock he would call working stock. That is to say, stock you would buy with your work. And thus he was able to create a corporation with two kinds of stock. One in which people put up money, and one in which people would put up work. Now the working stock meant you had to transfer your work into the product. In other words, you could own the share provided you and your team of oxen, you couldn't use horses here, it's too rocky. They would break their legs. There are no horses in this county in the 18th century. They'd break their legs. You can't walk on this stuff. I know anyone who lives in Cowell knows you can't put a spade in the ground without hitting rock. I mean, just think of what it was like when it wasn't even this well done. And as a consequence, therefore, only people who had a team and some property could get working stock. And what the work was to deliver rock. Now that's got to be a no-brainer for anyone living in West Essex. If we have any national product, it's rock. Every farmer had rock walls. You can still see the remnant of that if you want to look at the Roseland Library. All they had to do is take the rock they were pulling out of their fields every year anyway and deliver it to the new road. Moreover, they could deliver two kinds of rock. They could deliver crushed rock, which they could break all summer long when they weren't doing their farming, and all winter long. And they could all be delivered in the winter on the snow using sleds, so that they didn't have to break axles and wheels and have roads. They could go over the snow. And thus the farmers here said, yeah, I could sell you rock, and I'll be happy to take some shares for it. And so very quickly, between 1802 and 1808, he was able to get enough farmers to buy working stock. And they began immediately then to start dragging this stuff in the winters, only in the winters, to the site of the road. Meanwhile, he then used his capital to go out and buy the land and the right-of-way. Now, not everybody wanted to sell their right-of-way, because that straight line that would run from Newark all the way to the west of the Essex County here will actually end at the foot of Bloomfield Avenue right down here. All of that land, of course, not everybody wanted to sell it. In fact, there were houses on it, there were barns on it, there were all kinds of things. Eventually, he was able to buy it all using the power of eminent domain. They had to sell it, and of course, agreed price, but not everybody was happy. In fact, one of these people got killed in a fight over the question of whether he would yield his land or not. But nonetheless, with the power of the state behind him, he was able to kind of get all of the rights of way to build the straight road. There was one other small factor in stock here, a woman whose last name was never recorded named Polly. Polly did not want the road running in her front garden. She had planted her roses and her flowers and everything else. Eventually, after having a confrontation with weapons on both sides, Israel Crane decided to make her an offer she couldn't refuse. He bought her a silk dress. With that, Polly decided they could put the road in front of her house, and thus the road got through. But the genius of this is, of course, trading work stock and capital stock. But Crane was even thinking further ahead. I will set it up so that the people who have working stock can only sell it back to me. So the farmers got their shares of stock, and as the road began to open up and began to collect its tolls, it was to be a turnpike paid for the people who used it, he now had a source of revenue with which he could buy back the shares of stock, the working stock, until eventually he owned the whole thing as a monopoly. The word wasn't used then, I didn't know it, but that's exactly what he did. And with that, he becomes the wealthiest person in the area. Smartest thing, he's got a built-in source of revenue forever, as long as people want to move goods and services across West Essex, which is what, in fact, he set out to do. Now, the route he built this from begins on Belleville Avenue in Newark today, 3rd Avenue in those days, and it stretches all the way out to Pinebrook in Essex County. It runs about 12 miles. So if you're setting your odometers, that's the way if you take Bloomfield Avenue. A branch was set up shortly after it began at the top of the second mountain, and it turns north and runs down to Singac. We call it today the Pompton Turnpike, but he owned both. And they were all done with the same stock and the same process. The farmers delivering the crushed rock, and the rest of the road could be built. Because the whole system, when it was first built, was about 22 miles of road. But the only straight roads in the United States. In a sense, the superhighway of its age. From the top of what is now Verona there, where Montclair joins Verona, that branch that goes down through Singak, of course, ran into the river, where there is a little falls, which had prevented any commerce from going through, as well as a great falls. So the useless river, but it had to be crossed. It took a long while before that was done, but not all too long, because he was now making money, and he could afford to build a bridge, which he did. And of course, that bridge then could connect with a bridge going the other way, and thus he could build something called two bridges. And from which then he could then move farther north until he could finally get to Booton, which was a place from which you could float the rock down and smelt it. And thus he began that. Of course, we today call that Route 23. And if you could move the rock from there to Booton, well then why not bring it down from further north and west? And eventually that road, as a straight road, runs all the way up to, well, past Booton. Where does it go end up? Route 23. Port Jervis. Port Jervis. It becomes one long 53-mile turnpike to deliver rock. Eventually, of course, once it reached there, then he began to project the one west further into Morris County, since there weren't any good roads. And thus he built it all the way out through Pinebrook, and from Pinebrook to Denville, and from Denville then to Mine Hill, and eventually today we would call that Route 46, which, as you notice, is unlike all of the other roads in the state, it's straight. And Bloomfield Avenue extended, the same principle goes all the way through. Eventually, of course, he was now up to 40 miles of turnpike, getting money from 4 toll stations. One in Newark, where you got on in Newark. One when you got on to the Pompton Turnpike in Verona. One here in Caldwell, where you would join from other areas. And of course, one at the end of the road in Pinebrook, or at the foot of the hill there. And as a consequence, he could control the money. Eventually, another one would be built in Singak, but he now had a system of this. Now, this road, by the way, has places where it actually paralleled the old roads. In fact, there are places where it joined. He just, because of the power of eminent domain, could take them over. Thus, there are some stretches here of old Bloomfield Avenue prior to that one. For example, in Caldwell, there's something called Elm Avenue, which is the old road. But when it pulls down and joins in today, opposite the Forte, it then joins the straight road. And it runs to the west of town and goes down the hill, and then it splits off to become Clinton Road. And from Clinton Road, then it becomes Fairfield Road. Now, this road was not only supposed to be straight, it was also supposed to be sturdy, but it was also supposed to be bridged. There would be no way in which the traffic could be stopped day or night. Well, think of what that meant in the 18th century, the early 19th. No way to stop the road day or night. The traffic could keep rolling round the clock. Thus he bridged it. The roll stone arch bridge, because that's what the working stock was providing, was stone. Some of them still exist. You can go see them today. Go down to Verona, where Bloomfield Avenue and the Peckman River runs under it. It's all walled in on the sides, but when the river is low, go take a look underneath. Take a flashlight, and you will see the stone arch bridge is still there. There's one in Caldwell, but the mayor and the council won't let you see it. But it's where, in fact, Pinebrook goes under Bloomfield Avenue, down Brookside Avenue, to join near Westville Avenue, what the stream is what today we call, of course, Pinebrook. But that stone arch bridge is still under Bloomfield Avenue up there. Now, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you crawl into the entrance, where Brookside and Westville join, and there's a stone arch bridge there, surprise, and you're daring enough to walk up there, and you're willing to take the risk that it will not rain and a surge of water will not come down, you can find that under there. The stone arch bridge is still there. Or if you want to be safer still, if you go down all the way to the end of the road, and you sort of cross over into Pinebrook, you notice that as you're going over that new modern bridge, a little further up, there's a bridge. It's a junkyard there next to the restaurants. So if you go up there, that's the original bridge from 1806. So the 3 of these are still within your sight there. I would not urge you, by the way, to do under Brookside Avenue. It's not really safe. I've been on this council here, and a number of other people can tell you, that river that runs under there can generate a force that's incredible. You cannot stand in the face of that thing. In that tunnel, you can't stand in it going through the park. Don't ever climb into there when there's water running. The slippery bottom accelerates that water tremendously. It's very dangerous. But you can see the other two. Certainly nobody in Verona would care if you look into the bridge. They themselves probably don't know it's there. The bridge that was built was 2 wagons wide. How wide is 2 wagons? That's an interesting question. Oh, 6 foot, maybe 8, if you want to have 2 animals to pass. Maybe 15, 16 feet wide was the original road. And of course it was done that way so 2 wagons could pass. So you could have a constant stream of wagons going back and forth without any interruption 24 hours a day. The bridge itself was built by laying a layer of gravel down, putting on top of it 8-inch stones, cut in squares or blocks. We call them Belgian blocks now. And on top of that then was put another layer of crushed stone. On top of that layer of crushed stone they put something to make it bind. At first they put dirt or clay in, but once the road got going, and one of the major products was to carry tanning bark down to the tanneries, when the tanning is done and you've got all of that sludge, all of that decaying bark, they found that if you bring it up and spread it on the road, it is absorbent and it binds. It's gluey, it's cellulose. So then they covered the top with this, creating the first, in effect, macadam road, one where all of that gravel did not dissipate. Thus you could keep this thing running all the time. It's a wonderful system. Just environmentally, everything fit together to put it in that place. By the way, that system of building the roads is exactly the same as is described in Nordwood's book about Old Caldwell, where he describes building Passaic Avenue with exactly the same technology, in exactly the same order, because that's what they learned from, in fact, Isaac Crane. Now, once the rock was in, and the road was built, and the bridges were there, and all of the dirt and the stuff was put on top, what began to happen? Well, first of all, of course, the route began to become immediately filled with wagons. As the wagons pulled their load of rock down from Morris County and across here, day and night, remember that these wagons had no metal axles. This is wood on wooden wheels. And thus, all the trip long, you had to keep applying grease to keep it up. The noise of this was so loud it could be heard 6 miles away on either side of the road. And it went on day and night. No interruptions. The whole thing went through. As it went on, these wagons pulling it back and forth, they began to change everything around them. Everything around them began to change. For example, if we just take a small example here, what would happen if you could keep moving day and night in a straight line? Well, you could cut the time from Caldwell to Newark from 12-hour ride to less than 3 hours. Just think of the economic impact that had. But think of the life it made for the people in Caldwell. They could start on the road and take 2.5 hours to get to Newark. They could spend 4 hours in Newark shopping, having a wonderful time, doing wonderful things. They could even bring things with them and bring them back and be home for dinner.
Very modern.
Very modern, very progressive, right. Once this began to set in and people began to think about it, well, of course, there were a lot more things we could do. If we could, in fact, take ourselves down to Newark, well, then we could take something with us. For example, under the buggy seat, we could put some fish. Put down some wet hay, put the fish in, put wet hay on top of them, and deliver them fresh to Newark. We could make money. We could butcher the meat, pack it up here, and take it to Newark, and it would still be fresh when we delivered it. It's amazing. Suddenly this area that couldn't produce anything could produce lots of things that they could make money on. And indeed, they did produce many things that they could make money on. Not only could they make it on those kinds of products, but think of all the rest they could do. There was the iron ore, and there was, of course, this wonderful road that never stopped. And if you had animals, why not put them on the road? And so all the pigs were marched down the road, and the chickens, and the ducks, and the geese. And to make the chickens and ducks and geese walk down the road without, in fact, injuring them, you stepped their feet in tar so that they didn't, of course, get blisters as they walked down the road. And so this progression of animals began to march from West Essex down to Newark, changing, of course, the Newark market and changing the market here. People now could get money. They could afford to live in West Essex, maybe the last time, but there it is. They could begin to do it. Not only did the pigs go down, and the chickens, and the ducks, and the geese, but then you could also take cows, cattle, sheep, and turtles. And we laugh at turtles, but turtles were the biggest cash crop. You could go down to the Passaic River, and within a half an hour, you could catch yourself a dozen turtles weighing 10 to 14 pounds apiece, snapping turtles. You did this by dragging a little meat through the water by the muskrat holes. And of course the turtles would come right out, you clean them, put them in a little cage under your seat, take them down there. A 10-pound turtle will feed a family of 5 for 3 days. A little stew left over. We today can't imagine eating turtles. They were considered a gold mine. And they cost the farmer nothing. You could send his kids wading in the Passaic River till they got bitten if necessary to catch them. But you could move them down there and get them in there. Not only could they send dressed meat and fish and turtles, but they could also send down hay, broom straw, wood, splint wood, house wood, firewood. And if they could send the wood down there, why not, in fact, lighten the load by transforming the wood into buckets, baskets, and storage things? Why ship the broom straw down there when you can make brooms here? It lightens the load, but the profit is greater. It didn't take people out here very long to figure out that what Israel Crane had done was created the source of their wealth. And it transformed the area in many, many ways. Every farmer out here, of course, can't grow much. In fact, they could barely live at subsistence. It's recorded over and over again during the American Revolution. If the British ever came up here, they'd starve to death before they got to Morristown. There was nothing growing. Nobody was making any money. Every little farm had to grow a little bit of wheat, a little bit of rye. They could grow some buckwheat. They could grow some corn. They could grow some pumpkins. With luck, they could grow some squash. They could do pole beans. They could do something called yellow dock, which I don't think most of us want. They also grew milkweed. The seed pods, by the way, are edible. We haven't tried that recently, but it's there. They could grow sprouts, and they could have those chickens lay eggs for them. They could take the milk from the cows and make butter. By the way, that didn't hurt the cows any because they could water them up when they got to Newark and replace all of that fluid with water. Smart. And of course, later on, they could grow fruit, particularly apples and pears, and thus they began to become a very intensely agricultural area. They also grew their major cash crop, which was tobacco. And again, they stopped shipping the tobacco leaves down there and began to dry them themselves and mill them here. Thus they were shipping not the stems and the pieces, just the finished product, making the money here, as well as, of course, access to the markets in Newark and New York. So strong was that as early as 1809, a mill was built on Brookside Avenue so that they could, in fact, start processing things to ship to Newark. It doesn't happen to be a cutting mill for tobacco. They didn't ship it down shredded, by the way. Most of them shipped it down as Scotch snuff. They cut it into tiny, tiny pieces so that you could put it in your nose and get a high, or at least sneeze, and that way, but it was a great money maker. Eventually, of course, tobacco factories were opened all over the area here to take advantage of that road. Apples and cider, and of course, the apples could be changed to cider. The cider could be then changed to vinegar, or you could distill it. Now, each time you're doing this, you're reducing the volume and the weight, but you're improving the product. So that booze becomes then the next major money maker. We were selling Jersey Lightning, Applejack. We even developed apples, such as the Harrison apple, which was not good for eating, but was wonderful for booze. And we had it all over here. The last of the Harrison apples, by the way, I believe the tree was on the property of the Zenas Crane homestead and was cut down in the 1990s because it attracted wasps during the street fair. But that apple is probably in existence somewhere
Yes.
and can be used. Vinegar was used most widely for everything. It was probably the most universal household liquid other than water because it was also a very powerful acid. It's anything you wanted to clean or use, you could use vinegar to do. It also takes very tough meat and turns it into wonderful stew. Wood, of course, was the other thing that every farmer up here had because it had never been cleared. There were no fields, so it was heavily wooded. And as a consequence, they got very busy cutting down every tree, chopping them all down, cutting them up into cordwood, household wood, taking off the bark for tanning, bringing the bark back to cover the road, making money in both ways. And when they didn't want to do that, they can, of course, then pile the wood up, put dirt on top of it, fire it, and make charcoal, which is even lighter but more valuable. And the charcoal, of course, would then fire the iron furnaces. So not only were they shipping the iron down, they began to ship the fuel, making money on both ends. No wonder this is. Think of all the changes necessary for all of these things to happen. Think about it. For example, if you're going to have animals to sell, you have to get rid of the predators. You can't be raising cattle if the panthers are eating them. It won't work. And as a consequence, as soon as the road was open, a clear movement began to get rid of the predators. There are no wolves recorded in Essex County after 1820. They hunted every one of them down. There are no panthers. The last panther killed in Essex County was in 1810. Panthers, mountain lions, sure. Yeah. The last bears were shot in the 1830s. The last bobcat was shot actually on Runnymede Road over here in Essex Fells in 1856. All the minks, all of the weasels, all of the red foxes and gray foxes, all of them were gone by 1850. Every single last predatory animal in the county had been killed.
I have one in my backyard. Big one, right? Yeah.
They're coming back,
Mine's a
but
little,
they wiped them out.
mine's a little one with a big bushy tail.
All the game food also disappeared. The pigeons by 1828, the ducks, the geese, and the turkeys were all gone by the 1840s. All of them had been gone. Even the Passaic River was gone. That is to say, if they could sell the fish down there, then they would catch the fish. And to catch the fish, they moved from hook and line into, in fact, putting in nets. And within a very short period of time, before the 1840s, the pickerel, the pike, the musker, the catfish, the chub, the sunnies, all of the native species of fish were gone from the Passaic River. They fished it out. The fish that you find in the Passaic River now are all imported fish. German carp, Asian carp, these are pickerel, these are all fish that were introduced. Even the streams lost all their trout. It was gone within 20 years of the opening of the road. They just literally stripped the environment of everything. And when all of these things were gone, of course, something else was going. All the streams. Because to make the ponds to store the fish before they took them down there, they then redirected all of the drainage to make farms, little ponds. The biggest one was actually across the street here, where the Grover House used to stand, where the bank is now. It was a pond. And you could store a lot of fish in the pond, and when you wanted to take a load down there, you could put in a bucket and take them out, ship them down there. Well, pretty soon Bloomfield Avenue was loaded with ponds all the way along the line to store the fish and the turtles. And to fill them and keep them full, they re-diverted all the streams. And of course, once they did that, we began to lose them. And as a consequence, in Cowell today, we have two streams, both parts of the same one, the Pinebrook. One part starts up in here on the other side of the Barrel Hall. up past Calandras. The other one starts in North Cowell, runs down to Colville, a little piece where it's available above ground. It's a channel, but you can see it in the back of the Small Avenue parking lot, for example. You can see it there. And then it goes underground, goes under Bloomfield Avenue, the bridge, down Brookside Avenue under the sidewalk, and comes out in the park. That's where it comes out, in the park.
Way back in the woods.
There's no streams in there.
There's a brook.
She's asking about Francisco Park.
Oh, Francisco Park, yeah, that's in North Caldwell, that's where it starts, not the park here. Now, as a consequence, we only have 2 streams left out of 17. We lost 96 springs within 20 years of the opening of the road. We radically changed the environment. And it was progress. It got so bad, in fact, that when Essex Fells was created, they had to, in fact, plan on getting their water by having a municipal well that reaches now about a mile something deep. It's actually 3 of them now. To keep reaching the water table as we've lowered it steadily, as in fact the progress has come along. Of course, iron ore was the cash crop that everybody was worrying about, and that's the one, therefore, that most people were concerned about. And thus, ultimately, is where the Achilles heel of the Great Road was. Because if we could find other ways to move iron ore, or we could find other ways to move the fuel, or the limestone, then the Great Road would no longer have the financial backbone that it once had. The man who realized that, his name was Blair. He was, in fact, the man who was the manager of the Grover House. And as he sat there awake all night long by these wagons rolling by, it occurred to him, now that railroads are being built, if I can build a railroad to carry that, I can cut this thing off. And so he went out and he started a stock company, which he called the Lackawanna Railroad Company. And his railroad would then carry all of that down, would not go through West Exeter Mountain, but go through Boone, curve around and come down, picking up in Passaic County, and then down to Newark, and then to New York. And once Blair did that, of course, the Great Road was doomed.
What year is this?
He doesn't start this until just before the Civil War, but he builds the Lackawanna right after the Civil War in the late 1860s. That's the beginning of the end. The other part of it was Israel Crane himself, for he too had the same idea. And he said, well, the road requires a lot of drovers to drive these wagons back and forth. It's, it's very expensive to keep up and so forth. If we could move a lot more in bigger quantities, if we could float it. For we're floating all the lumber from North Jersey. We deforested North Jersey, by the way, to support this industry. And we floated it down the rivers. If we could float it across, we could cut out the road, but make more money. So he took the profits starting in the 1840s, actually in the 1830s, and began to build up something called the Morris Canal. And he had to get the state again to give the rights to eminent domain and so forth. It cost him a lot more to get the political changes by then because New Jersey had become even more corrupt by that period of time. But he got it. And he built it. And that starts on the Delaware River, where you can now get your coal, practically falls down the hills in Pennsylvania, across New Jersey, down to where the foundries were. And we could get the iron ore out, and thus we could cut out our own road. So he himself contributed to the decline of the road as the time went on. Yes?
And most of the economy was based on commodities, whether tobacco, coal, rock, wood. When did the retail stores start coming up along?
Well, that's another part of the story. Of course, not everything was going to Newark.
Yeah.
People had to come back day and night. And so things started to come back here. Newspapers, for example, where we had no newspapers at the beginning and the records of numbers of sales are very small. By the 1840s, every house in West Essex was getting one newspaper. People came over. There's a huge demographic change. People, different kinds of people are starting to move up and down. The Irish are beginning to appear. You're beginning to get all kinds of things happening in that sense. Not only are we getting newspapers and that, but we're also beginning to get manufactured goods. And as a consequence of you getting manufactured goods coming over the mountain, then of course people now have different ideas of what they want. Ideas come over the mountain. For example, in 1855, New York City had the first World's Fair in North America. What was demonstrated there was canning. Nobody knew about it, but within a year, the first truckloads or wagon loads of glass jars came up Bloomfield Avenue, transforming a fruit growing area into a canning area. Now peaches arrive, and they come to dominate. The beginning, if you will, ideas begin to come out. People are beginning to see things differently. For example, you have, in the early years here in Caldwell, no music. The church didn't approve of it. But by the 1840s, people are buying fiddles in Newark and bringing them out here, and they're sitting around at night playing games. Even recreation comes. Think about this. This is the silliest little thing. In the middle of the winter, you're snowed in. What do you do for fun?
Playing cards?
No. You now have a road. You hitch up your sleigh and you go on a frolic. You round up your neighbors and they all go and they all gather somewhere. The Grover House, the church. And they have a party in the middle of the winter. They have sleigh rides. Recreation comes to the winter. They can go to the river to ice skate. They can go to the ponds. They can move around. And since they all have sleds and sleighs, a new opportunity opens. Now, getting onto the Great Road was a bit of a problem, by the way, because the Great Road ran straight. The old roads ran where it was comfortable for people to move around. As a consequence, most people ran a lane from their farm to the Great Road. So the lanes all opened up, but they didn't necessarily have to meet. Brookside Avenue does not line up with Small or Park. Gould lines up with nothing. Central does not line up with anything. Forest does not line up with anything. Even as you go out here from Provost to Forest, these were lanes. These were private little roads. To this day, Bloomfield Avenue is incredibly complicated. How to make a left turn? Where to make it? How do you get from one side of Bloomfield Avenue to the other? There's no through streets. There's no right angle corners. You know, you drive up Roseland Avenue, you think you're going to go somewhere. Ha! You reach Bloomfield Avenue and you're in the middle of a jam that it takes you a while to get through. These things were part of it too at the same time. But there was a real flow of people, ideas, news, events, magazines, books, peddlers, fabrics. Then, of course, with the fabrics come not and buying the clothes, but buy the clothes pre-cut and sew them here. And thus, what opens here for the first time is women's work. They start buying the clothes pre-cut in Newark. It comes up here by wagon, and one day she sits there in the afternoon, stitches them together, makes the dress, the trousers, the shirts, ships them back to Newark. The next load comes right up. She's making 50 cents a day. That's real money. So much so was that work began to come up here in West Essex, that by the time the rumors began to dawn on people that the South and the North might go to war, one of those people, named Mr. Meade, who was a toll collector on the road as well, sent down south and bought up all of the cotton he could get his hands on and all of the cotton goods. He speculated. He bought it all. And he had it shipped up here. Well, when the Civil War does break out, and there's no trade between North and South, where do people go to get their cotton? Where do they go to get their fabrics? To Caldwell. So Meade said, hey, now that I've got a monopoly and the biggest thing around here, trade is now coming from Newark to us, instead of us to Newark, he said, why not, in fact, expand? He had 4 sons. So he said, one of them can have a store in Pinebrook, one can have one in Hanover, one can have one in Livingston, and one can have one in Roseland. And then he said to each son, you will be the buyer of this kind of merchandise, you will be the buyer of that kind, and do like I did, buy it in quantity. And you will give one quarter to your brother, another quarter to the other brother, another one to the other brother, and so forth. So out of that stone store that stood down in West Caldwell becomes the first department stores in the United States in 1868. Now there's another brilliant idea coming from the road. All in all, of course, this would have to come to an end, and it does. And by 1870s, the road is not making money anymore. And you can't let its upkeep fall away entirely. What are you going to do with an asset you can't sell to any other commercial investor? What does anybody do with an asset they can't sell to anybody commercially? They sell it to the government. And so they sold it to Essex County. Thus, Essex County became the first county in the United States to own a road. The first county road in the United States. And the other towns, when they found out what the freeholders had done, said, we want a county road. And so the county built Bradford Avenue, Eagle Rock Avenue, Mount Pleasant Avenue, Bloomfield Avenue, and Hobart Gap. And they all paved them and bridged them. Then the people began to say, well, how do we get from Northfield Avenue to Caldwell? We need some county roads to run north-south. Now the county, therefore, had to face the fact that it had to build a road called Pleasant Valley Way. It had to build something called Roseland Avenue, Livingston Avenue. It had to build something called Passaic Avenue, and began to tie this together, which gives us our present grid, or gridlock, if you want to see it, on which we did. By 1878, the county has taken it over. Well, that's not the end of the story. By 1879, with the county building the other roads, in 1879, Bloomfield Avenue lost its monopoly on the trade going east and west in New Jersey. That hasn't wiped us out, it's just created a very different option. Almost all of the building of New Jersey. By the way, one of the great things about this road is not only did it bring in these people, but also developed the specialization of labor. Every farmer in the 18th century did his own blacksmithing. Every farm family made their own shoes. Every farm family cut their own tobacco. Every farm family ground their own wheat. Shortly after this road was in here, there were 15 blacksmith shops, all specialists. There were 10 wheelwrights. Shoe industry became a major industry. The Civil War came along, we lived well. We made shoes for the North, the South, the Army, and the Navy. It all worked. Specialization of labor comes. Almost every aspect of the life in West Essex has been shaped by the Great Road. And we ride by it every day and are completely unaware, they say. There's not a marker on it. There's no designation of anything. It's not even named after a hero or anything else. It's just Bloomfield Avenue, or G.D. Bloomfield Avenue, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, he was a governor.
Well,
And he did invade Canada.
Yes, they in fact named the town after him. Right. So we have today one of the most curious things that we've got. Still a major U.S. road, the most densely traveled non-highway in the United States. It's a pioneer. We don't know anything about it. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions?
There are trolleys, right?
Trolleys come later, in the 1890s, yes. They started on the lower parts. They couldn't get up the hill from Montclair. It took a long time before they got up there. The first trolleys on Bloomfield Avenue were horse-drawn. The horse-drawn trolley couldn't get up the hill. We had the same problem in the west. The horse-drawn buses and trolleys from the west, you had to get off at Lane Avenue. All the passengers had to get off and walk up the hill to Caldwell because they were too heavy for the horses to pull. And stones are very slippery for horses in wet weather, even when they're shod. So the trolleys, eventually, when they were horse-drawn, they couldn't make it here. Even when they came from the west, from Morris County, when they got to Lane Avenue, they had to get out and walk up and get into Caldwell. By the way, that's right next to Lane, mine's gone blank, the name of Ravine. That was the other major brook in the area, but that's gone now, it's underground, it's disappeared. It only floods every now and then when the sewer line's back up. That was it. So eventually you had to wait till you got actually electric trolleys coming. And that doesn't come to the 1890s. That's difficult too, because when the first trolley comes out here, it turned around on Central Avenue because it couldn't make it down the hill and back up. So they turned at Central, and there was a big turnaround there and came through. On the day the first trolley came through, everybody turned out cheering. It was a big event, a big motion of progress here. It would help everything. And the kids were riding around on bicycles with streamers on and everything. One of the kids got his bicycle wheels caught in the tracks. And the trolley came along, killed him. So on the first day, we had one of the horrible tragedies took place at the Central Avenue. Yes?
I know how the first lines on the road were made.
How were they made?
This girl, she took one bucket of paint, and she painted lines from one spot, I think where she lived, to like a whole nother town or something.
That's right. That creates
I watched
lines down the middle of the road. The road was actually more complicated than that because alongside it existed the old road. So if you didn't want to pay the toll, you could take the mud road alongside it. So for a long while, this road out here was at 2 levels. Slowly but steadily, then when the county took it over, it was raised to make one road all the way through. And there it nearly needed to have lines for it. But the trolleys ran down the middle, not on the sides, which was a shame because then the road got wider as you put in parking spaces and the sidewalks got smaller and you lost your cafes and all the things to get on the side of the road. So we're now in the position now where we're trying to go the other way. Trying to get the sidewalks safe enough that you can now have, like you do over here at the coffee shop, where you now have some chairs out on the road and people can gather. Because the road has become almost unusable for pedestrian traffic until we get some barriers up. That's why we separated the curb from the sidewalk with that brickway, to create a visual barrier so that people wouldn't push each other into the street and into traffic. It's a good story to tell. Yeah. Should also add the other thing, of course, eventually the commuting, which the trolley was replaced by the railroad. The railroad reached Caldwell again in the 1890s. Eventually it would reach over to Essex Fells, where it would turn around, turn the engines around, and come back. And Essex Fells had a rather big railroad yard there. When the railroad first came into Caldwell, having climbed the mountain, and had to go all the way up to Great Notch, and then run across all the way through the towns in the valley there, up to Verona to get enough height to go under Bloomfield Avenue. The cut is still there. And then run along parallel to it till it comes to the bend here, where the road turns, where Forte is. And that's where the railroad station was put. And they lined it up in all in perfect lines. So the first train came in, they didn't realize that the train was rigid. So as it's going around the corner there, there's part of it is going to hang off that curved rail. So the first train that came in hit the station, smashed it. And on the other end of the station was a band playing. A big crowd had turned out to welcome this great development. It must have been a wonderful day to watch them all run for their lives as the train smashed the station in front of them. But they got here. It's an interesting thing. Any other questions? All right, go home, do some research. Try it out. The nice thing is to walk it. There's so many interesting things on Bloomfield Avenue that you never think about. For example, Colville has 9 alleyways going off there between stores and buildings. Walk the avenue and keep your eyes open. See if you can find the alleyways. Or look at what happened at the Great Bend up there. What's at the Great Bend? It's now at the foot of Lincoln School. But what's there? Why would they build a wall with rocks on the top of it? Pointed ones.
To keep the kids from sledding off into the street.
Keep the kids from sledding down into Bloomfield Avenue, which was too dangerous because the traffic was too bad. All these little things are there if you go look for them.
Dave, the stone bridge that's on Fortin Road, is that of the style that they?
The same style, yes.
So
It's a
that's
stone
what,
arch
that's one they
bridge.
could see without having.
But that comes
to
later.
slide. Yeah.
That was built later in the 1820s. It's still a very old bridge and one of the few things that we were able to get protected. Because people still complain now it's only 2 lanes wide. But it's probably as wide as Bloomfield Avenue was in its time. I use that as sort of my point. It would be about that wide.
Where is the original bridge that Crane built by Verona?
The Peckman River runs off Verona Lake, right? The river there was dammed to make the lake.
Okay,
There's
so
a fairly big, when it runs north, it's one of the few rivers in New Jersey that runs north. As it runs north, it runs under Bloomfield
I
Edge.
live
That
in
is
Roseland, so I'm not familiar.
Pleasant Valley Way.
Pleasant Valley Way.
Lakeside, Lakeside. Or, it's called
Vernon
Lakeside
Park.
there, but then it becomes Pleasant Valley Way, so.
It's called Lakeside Avenue in Verona. It runs right into Bloomfield Avenue, Lakeside. And right there,
So-
as you turn the corner, there's a bridge over the Peckman River. If you get off and get onto the park side of it and walk down to the edge and take a flashlight, you can see the stone bridge is still under it.
Is that where the Verona Park is you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Verona Park.
It's still there. By the way, there's a long one with several arches in it over a swamp that is on the border of Newark and what is now Bloomfield. And I have not found that. I've been down there and sort of walked around, I haven't found it yet, but everybody tells me it's still under there somewhere. There are a couple of streams running through there that are all channeled now. And I'm not sure, particularly if you take the one that runs through Glen Ridge by the old Glen Ridge and then runs down the hill into Bloomfield, somewhere along there, there's gotta be more bridges. I just haven't found it yet. But it's a good thing to do on a nice sunny day when you have nothing else, is let's go explore and find it. You can find out, by the way, where the canal cut the river, because now the trolley lines in Newark, the subway runs down that same space. Because they drained the canal and put the subway in the space. Which is why the Newark subway doesn't go
Is that
anywhere.
where the canal was, where the
Yeah.
subway is in?
Yeah, they just took the water out and put the subway in.
Interesting.
Now you could ask yourself, why didn't they send the subway up here? Wouldn't it be nice to have had a light rail? That's some new political agenda that rises, right? Get ourselves put on light rail. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy. For those of you interested